Hey folks, and welcome back to another video from D1 DLC. Today we'll be taking a look at just how much of a difference using an SSD makes to your load times on the PS4. So recently we released a how-to video on just how simple it is to install an SSD in your PS4. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. You'll be surprised at just how easy it is to do. The link is in the description below. So starting off, it's important for you to note that these tests were done on the original PS4 console using a Samsung QVO 1TB SSD. Why is this important? Well, each SSD out there has a varying performance depending on their maximum read and write speeds. We'll give you a brief rundown on some of those differences a little later on, but for now let's jump straight into the good stuff and highlight how much of a difference this SSD makes to some real world load times. And for the sake of everyone's sanity, mine included, all of these load times have been sped up for the purposes of this video. Okay, so first off, let's take a look at a golden oldie, The Witcher 3. Notorious for horrendous initial load times, The Witcher 3's wide open world meant that dying was a fate worse than, well, dying. So as we can see, there's roughly a 29 to 30% decrease in load times using the SSD compared to the stock mechanical hard drive. Not a bad result. Now let's take a look at Just Cause 4, which similarly has a massive open world to roam in. And again, we see a nice decrease here with around about 38% for Just Cause 4. Okay, so I know you're all asking, well, for those that are still playing it, what about the worst loading screen game of all time? Anthem. Well, here we go. So we don't see quite the same gap with Anthem, however there still is a 22% decrease in load times. Now there are plenty more games out there we could check out, but I'm sure you're seeing a pattern emerging here. We notice the same decreases in Resident Evil 2 and The Division 2. Okay, so before we mention, performances will differ depending on the SSD you're using. Now there are loads of stats out there, but for the sake of keeping things relatively simple for this video, here's a basic idea of the latest Samsung range and their associated performance numbers. As you can see, the 860 QVO and the 860 EVO are pretty much on par, and the Pro pulls ahead of both of those. So what does this really mean though? Well, there will be a slight improvement going up from the 860 QVO to the EVO to the Samsung 860 Pro, but realistically, for load times, we don't believe this will be a significant difference. That said, we haven't actually tested the Pro and would love your input if you have. Okay, so the only other thing to note here is the price point of these SSDs. Now considering you've already shelled out for the PS4 console itself, it's safe to assume you aren't really looking to spend as much, if not more, on an SSD for it. So we do recommend the Samsung 860 QVO for its relatively cheap price point in comparison to the EVO and Pro versions. Currently on PC Case Gear, the QVO is advertised at $175 AU, the EVO at $209 and the Pro at a whopping $389. So does this warrant the cost it takes to purchase an SSD and install it? Well, personally I feel like it does, particularly in games like Anthem where load times are so frequent. You'll actually save yourself a fair bit of time here by decreasing those wait times by roughly 30% every time you hit a load screen. For other games like Division 2, there are very few overall load screens, so you probably won't see as much of a benefit here. The other thing to note though is the PS4 UI itself felt snappier and more responsive compared to the sluggish performance of the hard drive. This is hard to measure though and might come down to my personal perception of the UI, but I still feel like it's an improvement. Okay folks, that's just about a wrap for this video. Have you tried using an SSD in your PS4, and what were your thoughts on the differences between that and the hard drive? Leave a comment below and let us know what else you'd like to see. And as always, if you like the video, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.